You're on,
And you tell me you're
always.
still politicking. You
yes,
can't get rid of it.
until next March, until we
next
stand
March.
down.
And people are still coming to you on the street and talking to you and asking for this and asking for that.
That's right. And it's a privilege to do as much as I can for them. After all, that's the job of a councillor, night and day.
Yeah. How long have you been doing that now?
It'll be 14 years if God spares me in next year in April, in March when I finish.
I love the way you say if God spares me, because you have a strong belief in God.
Oh yes, of course. I mean, I believe that I'm answerable for what I do in this life, you know. And oh yes, and that helps me tremendously. You have, as I say, you have great days, good days, and bad days. But I see the bottle always half full.
Yeah, it's the way to have it.
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah, and I thank God for that attitude.
Now, you're also a lifetime nurse at Daisy Hill Hospital.
That's right. I would have spent about 35 years in Daisy Hill. I started off as an orderly, then an enrolled nurse, and then a staff nurse, and I enjoyed every moment of it.
Of course you did. And can you, when you even begin to imagine the amount of good that you've done over that time, it's a huge reservoir of kindness.
It's a great privilege to be looking after people who are ill, a great privilege. And to see them, especially in a surgical ward, a bad, say, RTA, and you'd see them recovering, that is unbelievable. And that spurs you on to the next person.
Of course, you have a commonality in your nursing and healthcare. One of the great human beings ever to live, Mother Teresa.
Unbelievable. She was a wonderful character. Mind you, some people weren't that keen on the thought, but I think myself, to go out onto the streets of Calcutta and to lift people out of the gutter, this is that was extraordinary on her behalf.
Absolutely. A great woman. I'll let no one take away from her. Now, you were at a meeting yesterday about the stroke unit at the hospital, Daisy Hill Hospital.
That's right. We met.
Who did you meet?
We met Mairead McAlinden. We met some other officials, directors of the trust, and we met the consultants who will be running this new stroke unit. It was an excellent debate, discussion, and it went back and forward. A little maybe heated, but a great understanding. I mean, you know and I know, the trust at the moment is under tremendous pressure. Yeah. The healthcare system in the north, it's in dire need of money. And we see the shenanigans going on in Stormont. And so they're doing a great job. But we as representatives in our area, we have also got an obligation to represent and do the best we can for our area.
And what was the purpose of the meeting yesterday? Well, is the new unit at Daisy Hill, is it a foregone conclusion? Is it going to be there?
Well, it's out until the 31st of October. You can put in a submission defending your area or whatever it is. If you feel that you or your loved one has had tremendous treatment in Daisy Hill and you'd like to see the unit stationed there and not in Craigavon, then you can send in your submission into Mairead McAlinden, Chief Executive Officer, Portadown Road, Craigavon, or Craigavon Area Hospital, and that'll get her.
But John, is it still the Trust's preferred option that the unit will be based in Craigavon?
Well, it seems like that. You see, fundamentally what it's all about, the Trust maintains we intend setting up a super acute unit wherever. Right. Well, that simply means that fundamentally it boils down to the provision of occupational therapy, physiotherapy and speech therapy 7 days a week. Well, at the moment, as I say, the Trust is in dire need of money. It probably can't afford to put those features in the two hospitals. So that's what it really boils down to.
But in reality, John, if we think about it, to go from Newry to Craigavon, you'd do the journey more quickly than you would go almost from take Downpatrick, in our new area, right. Downpatrick to Newry.
That's right.
So, you know, and if Craigavon is going to have greater access to greater facilities, maybe it's not such a bad thing.
Oh, I know. Oh, they maintain, if they set up a super acute unit, they maintain one, that the treatment will be more swifter, and hopefully that the patient will recover much quicker and return back to their home. You see, the whole emphasis now in healthcare is, especially in elderly people, if we can keep elderly people in their home, provide for them in their home, whether it be by family or whether it be by the Trust. That's the whole thrust now of health is, particularly with older people. But our argument was, the road from here to Craigavon, it's a very poor road.
Yeah.
Now, there's another important factor come out yesterday. We in this area would have a much older generation, much older population than the one in Craigavon. So there'll be a preponderance of older people that where you have onset of strokes, more here perhaps in that area.
Now, the two professional medics who were there yesterday, the doctors.
Oh yeah.
What's their official position?
Oh yeah. Well, they would be experts in that field. There'd be top physicians, consultant physicians in that field, and they'll be overlooking. They say also that there'll be 6 consultants.
Yeah.
6 consultants over a 24-hour period looking after this unit.
Are they in favour of the unit going to Craigavon?
Well, of course, you know, doctors are very diplomatic people, and I know from having talked to them over the years in Daisy Hill, the doctors do not like to get involved in politics. Forgetting party politics, they don't like to get involved. They step back because it's the senior civil servants, after all, who will make the decision.
But John, they weren't stepping back yesterday. They were there for consultation.
Well, they were there, right. But they were there yesterday to give information to those councillors and the people involved in that committee, because we would have lay people also involved in that committee. So they were there to answer any questions, any queries, any fears or anxieties that we might have on behalf of our clients, on behalf of our population. They were there to answer.
Yeah. It's important, I think, to let people know that immediate stroke, you know, the FAST thing, face.
Face, arms, speech and timing. Yeah.
So it's important to realise that if someone is afflicted by a stroke, in the minutes after it, they're not going to have to be collected and taken to Craigavon.
No.
They'll be collected by ambulance and taken to Daisy Hill.
Right. What actually happens is a patient has a stroke, the ambulance goes out, the patient is taken to Daisy Hill, they have a CAT scan. Now the CAT scan will determine the type of stroke that it is. For instance, if it's a clot, they can give you a clot bursting injection, and not always, but in most cases that'll scatter the clot, and you'll find a recovery is fairly swift over the few days. But if it's a stroke coming from a brain hemorrhage or deterioration of a blood vessel in the brain, the clot bursting drug, it has no effect. So once they determine the type of a stroke, then they get the clot bursting drug if it's a clot. Then they're taken off to Craigavon, or Craigavon if that's where it's going to be. They'll stay in Uri.
The recovery process.
Yeah, and that's the recovery process. And there they will have intensive then therapy over the next 7 days to see then how the patient. But an awful lot will depend on the density of the stroke.
Are you convinced, as a medical person yourself, that the time factor from the stroke occurring here and the person getting to Daisy Hill, getting the CAT scan, that's all containable within the safe bracket that requires action?
Well,
quickly?
these are the promises that are being made. I wouldn't have grave doubts, but an awful lot will depend on the availability of the ambulance. For instance, one of my colleagues told me there was an ambulance from Derry working in the Newry area last Friday. So the ambulance services worked to the bone. So it's vitally, vitally important that that once they have the checks done in Daisy Hill, that they're taken as swiftly as possible to Craigavon, because the Royal College of Physicians tells us the first 4 hours of a stroke are vital.
Yeah. But John, it's not just checks. Help me here. It's not just checks at Daisy Hill that are going to occur. It's that initial intervention medically that will occur to bust the clot, and that will be done at Daisy Hill.
Oh yes, that'll be done at Daisy Hill. Oh yeah, that'll be done at Daisy Hill, and then the decision will be made then, should they go off then to Craigavon for this intensive service. You see, we have got a big problem. For instance there, you take an older person, strokes occur mostly in around 60, 65, though I've nursed strokes at 45 and 50. But the important thing there is, if they have no transport, to get to Craigavon could take, say, from the extremes of South Down and South Armagh, could take three journeys, 3 bus journeys. Yeah, another factor regarding a stroke, which is very important, the family support during the stroke period in their lives is vitally important, because what actually happens is the patient that gets intensive care, but the family's coming in every day because they contribute to the physiotherapy. For instance, over the years, families will come in, they'll walk the patient up and down, the exercise is vitally important. They'll also help them in relation to occupational therapy, dressing. In some cases they'll come in and they'll assist, or they'll give a bath or a shower to the patient. So the family involvement is vital.
Close, that, as you say, vital, but you know, it's the nature of family, or it should be the nature of family.
But it
that
does.
You're my father, I'm your son, you're my sister, you're my brother. That we lift each other as family and help each other as family.
Right. Yeah, but the onset of a stroke, you've got obviously serious physical disabilities. Now, if it's a stroke affecting the right side of the body, nearly always it affects the speech. And in some cases, if it's a bad effect, the patient is coming out talking to you gobbledygook, but in actual fact, in their mind, they're saying, I'm all right, or I'm this, I'm that, but it's not coming out because the voice box has been affected, you know. So that can lead, so the physical disabilities, there's also the psychological factors if it's affecting the right side in particular, and even the left side. And then there's serious financial sides. You take a working man there, he's working, and suddenly at 55 he takes a stroke. The wife and the children are depending on his wage. And if he's working for a firm that, for instance, they don't have an insurance package, as it were, well, then that family, they're going to suffer from the fact that the father has had a stroke, and they're going to suffer financially.
What's the council's position on it? You were there with other councillors yesterday. Newry and Mourne District Council, what are they saying about the location of the unit?
Well, for the councillors that were there yesterday, there were some yesterday, they had reservations, and some of them were quite quiet. To see this, a stroke and health in particular can be very complicated. So in other words, there's an awful lot that a lot of that stuff can go above your head. Yeah, but there was a reasonable understanding from fellow councillors yesterday. The roads were mentioned, the fact that poor transport getting to the area, the rurality factor was mentioned in particular. People living in rural areas, the difficulty getting there and visiting there, that kind of thing. So that was expressed quite strongly.
I suppose too, John, if you're coming from Warren Point at the height of a Thursday with school traffic and all the rest of it, it's going to take you a long time getting from Warren Point to Daisy Hill.
Getting from Warren Point in the morning to schools, say from 8:15 till 9:15 on the Warren Point Road, it is unbelievable.
And if you have an ambulance in the middle of
well,
that,
if you have
that's
an
not
ambulance,
easy.
Well, the chances are that the ambulance will get precedent.
Get through.
So there'll be no problem in that case, you know.
Well, your glass, you tell me, is always half full rather than half empty. How can you still be half full when we're thinking of the kind of financial restrictions when we need a dairy ambulance down here in Newry last Friday?
Well, now that's
it's hard to maintain that kind of optimism.
Well, that's
John.
what one of my colleagues said, and sometimes you've got to take with a pinch of salt what people say. But I know myself that the ambulance service is worked to the bone, and it's going to put massive pressure on them. So this business of the 4-hour factor is vital. But there again, I mean, we can talk in theory at the moment. We've got to wait and see what actually happens. And as you know, if things go well, you see, when things go well, people obviously don't complain. When things start going barmy, then people start, you know, and that time obviously hasn't arrived yet. Now, am I optimistic or pessimistic where their unit will be? Because my argument and our party's argument is this: we have an excellent stroke unit in Daisy Hill. Now, it isn't the case that it should be Daisy Hill or Craigavon or vice versa. I am saying we should retain the unit that we have. That's our fundamental argument. We should retain the excellent unit, which the board have said over the years we have an excellent unit. So our argument is we should retain that unit and let it grow and grow.
John McArdle, I wish you well. Thank you very much indeed. You're a good man as always, and very confident that you're in there with your hand on the helm of our therapeutic requirements. Thank you so much.
You've got to stand up and fight for your corner. And win, lose or draw, it's a marvellous thing to say. I came, I mightn't have conquered, but I tried my best.
Indeed, indeed. Now, don't go yet. Sit down. We're still live on air to the people. So I'm going to play you Joni Mitchell now.
Right.
River.